All right, so let's talk about this game. And obviously, I think the number one question, and I know you don't know the answer, is the health of Alex Smith. I feel like it's trending in a direction where they're going to just go with Dwayne. But who knows? I mean, Ron says, and he's right, that Alex is a proven veteran that doesn't need a ton of reps. So, I mean, if he feels good on Sunday, they feel like they can give him a go. But it doesn't feel like it's trending in that direction, to me anyway.
I mean, the word I heard early in the week on Monday was hopeful. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. There's a lot of things I hope for in the world, but
right.
One thing that is obvious to me, EB, is that they're going to give him every possible chance to be the starter. So Ron has already come out and said he doesn't need to practice all week, and that I'll take this decision up to Sunday morning. So, I mean, just that alone means...
What does that tell you?
To me, it means they don't want to play Dwayne.
Exactly.
It's you put Alex on the field at all costs. But here's another little thing to watch is procedurally, if they need a backup quarterback. So I asked Ron about this early in the week, and he completely dismissed me, which leads me to believe he just doesn't really want to talk about it. But if they know Alex can't play and he would be inactive on game day, they're going to have to call up one of their two practice squad quarterbacks Saturday night.
Right.
And I honestly believe it would be Taylor Heineke, because that guy has started for Ron and Scott Turner in Carolina before. Steven Montez is an exceptionally raw prospect, whereas at least Heineke has started an NFL game before. And that was a few years ago, don't get me wrong. But we'll at least know if Alex is going to be active by Saturday afternoon, because the COVID practice squad call-ups usually happen Saturday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, but here's the thing, JP.
What's that?
Don't you think that I just think because of his situation being as delicate as it is, it could be like last week where they could say, okay, Alex starts, and then, second possession, it tightens up again, just like it did last week. They go with Dwayne, and then they're basically still vulnerable the rest of the game. So I think they're going to have all three active, regardless.
I think 100% you could, even if Alex starts, I don't know that he'll finish.
Right, and Dwayne could get hurt.
Yeah,
or
I mean, you could have Logan Thomas out there. It could be
right. They want to avoid that. I think they're going to have all three active.
Then call up Heineke. It'll be
and
interesting.
And Heineke would be the guy. Heineke would be the guy.
I believe,
because he's a veteran.
I believe we're going to get to go to practice today. I think Ron's going to have him outside. Although now I see actual flurries outside of my window, so maybe that'll hinder us going to practice today. But it'll be really interesting to see, and we're only going to get a limited amount of time, especially on a Friday. They speed things way up on Fridays. But to watch who is getting maybe those second-team reps. And because Alex is just watching right now. Dwayne's getting the bulk of the work. But especially if it's going to be Heineke, who hasn't been with this team but for one game or really 10 days or something, that they need to figure it out. I mean, as much as he doesn't know the linemen, he doesn't know the receivers, he doesn't know the running backs. Running back's another problem for them. I mean, I don't think Antonio Gibson is playing maybe till week 17. The fact that they just signed Lamar Miller and he can't even play this week.
That's a tell, yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because they have so much momentum, particularly on the defensive side, but these injuries on offense, the players, I truly do believe in Dwayne, but I don't know that the coaching staff does at all, and I'd argue that the staff is giving you reason to believe they don't. Gibson was becoming such a huge factor for them. He's hurt. Offensively, I mean, you can't count on 2 touchdowns from your defense every week, and you can't count on playing Nick Mullins every week. And
right.
I don't know. It's a very different challenge this weekend.
Don't you think, though, isn't my logic correct? Because if Alex goes out, I mean, last week he admitted, I think you were the one that asked him the question, that it was bothering him a little bit during the week, but he thought it was never going to be an issue, and then all of a sudden it became an issue. If that happens in, say, the first series or two, and then Dwayne is out there, and then and then Dwayne gets, let's say, knocked out of the game, a helmet-to-helmet thing, you're not going to want to go with Logan Thomas for 3 quarters, right? You just no way.
No, you can't.
You got to have
either
3
way,
just because Alex is so vulnerable.
Either way, you're going to lose the game. But you're right; they're not going to go to Logan.
Don't you think they have to have 3 up?
I think they have to consider it, and it'll be a big tell because Ron likes to play everything super tight to the vest when it comes to injuries. Although I thought it was really interesting. So Wednesdays in the NFL, the starting quarterback has to do a press conference, and that's been going on for years. I thought it was so they didn't tell us when they sent out the media schedule. It just said, Ron Rivera 2:30, Scott Turner 2:45, QB TBD. I don't know if the press folks knew who was going to be the quarterback, and so we were all just kind of waiting in the Zoom room, and then Alex showed up. We're like, oh, all right, that's a big deal.
Right.
And maybe you just send Alex out because he's really polished with the media and can handle whatever comes his way, and whereas Dwayne got pretty emotional after the game Sunday.
Right.
And maybe that's all that was, but I did think that was telling that they at least want to present the veneer that, hey, sure, Alex is a little beat up, but he's our guy for Sunday. Maybe that's gamesmanship. I don't know. But
is Ron big into that? Is Ron one of those guys that, plays games that way to try to keep the opponent at bay? Is he old school that way or what?
I mean, he doesn't want any injury information disclosed, and that's not because he cares about what I tweet. That's because he doesn't want that information getting out to the other team, I assume. With stuff like that, he is old school because there's times, especially during training camp, where the media. So when you're watching practice, there's very specific rules about what you're allowed to kind of point out, especially when it comes to formations, and if they do anything unique, you're never supposed to mention stuff like that, right? And obviously, if you've been watching Scott Turner all year, there's some trick plays and some strategic differences. And as that started to unfold during training camp, when we were able to watch the entire practice, there were times where people would tweet that out or point it out, and we got quick and stern talking to by the PR staff, and that's because they're instructed to do that. Now, whether Ron actually saw a specific tweet or heard something, I don't know, but it's a much stricter culture with a lot of that kind of information, and I think that's because Ron likes to keep everything in-house and not tip off the opponent.
So how big is the DeShazer Everett injury? He's going to be out for the rest of the year.
I think it's really tough. I think since he got out on the field for them, he's brought such a level of physicality to the back end, and maybe it's coincidental, maybe it's not, but Washington leads the NFL in dropped passes against, and I mean, when guys watch film, when the opposing receivers watch film to get ready for Washington, there's no way they don't see 22 flying around and laying the wood on guys. Every game you can go back and watch, and there's a real highlight level hit that sometimes we're a little bit reckless. I mean, he's like a missile out there. He launches himself, and I think you lose that, and that's a blow. Now, Cam Curl's probably been playing better than DeShazer. I think Cam Curl's been a more complete safety, and he's physical too. But that duo was playing really well, and I think now you're going to go to Jeremy Reeves. And I thought Reeves has played reasonably well. I actually liked Reeves in training camp 2 years ago, and he's kind of bounced up and down and around from the practice squad. But, I mean, you're talking about a seventh-round rookie who's played great and a practice squad guy with Russ Wilson and DK Metcalf coming to town. Arguably, I think you'd say those two, or you'd say Rodgers and Devontae Adams as kind of the most, dangerous threats in the game.
Yeah. And what's funny is this could be the first of two games in the same stadium between these two teams. I know there's a lot of games to be played with 3 weeks left, but if Washington can hold on, win the division, they'll be the 4 seed. And right now Seattle's the 5. Tampa's right there behind them, but we could see Washington, Seattle again if Washington hangs on.
I mean, how wild would that be? And especially the parallels this year to 2012, and then you get Seattle at FedEx for a home playoff game would just be crazy. I think this Seattle team is tricky because if you look at how Washington's performed against the kind of elite, elusive quarterbacks in Kyler and Lamar, it hasn't been good. But those were both those games were in the first month of the season. This defense is a entirely different group now than they were in early September. But I think if you're a Washington fan, the Seahawks have a huge game next week against the Rams as a potential NFC West title, kind of showdown. And maybe there's a little bit of look ahead here. I doubt it with the way Washington's been playing and the way they've kind of surged on the national radar with especially that Steelers win. But Seattle's going to be a really difficult challenge, I think. And it's easy to look at, they're coming off blowing out the Jets, but the Jets are awful.
Right.
2 weeks ago, Seattle lost to a Colt McCoy-led Giants team, and they only scored 12 points.
Right.
And
the offensive line was bad in that game, too.
Yeah.
So give me the scenario, JP, because, let's be honest. Even those of us that are diehard fans didn't necessarily see the 4 in a row. I definitely didn't see them beating Pittsburgh. Even San Francisco I thought was going to be a tough one for them. Give me the scenario where they could pull this off, because I just keep getting these visions of Russ running around and DK making big plays, and I just don't know how he can keep up.
The trouble to envision the scenario is the limitations on offense is if Alex can't play or if Alex plays and isn't right. I think it'd be worse for this team to put Alex out there if he is roughly the same guy we saw in the first half against San Fran. Because however uninspiring Dwayne's performance was, it was still better than what Alex gave them in the first half. If Alex is healthy and can go, then you've got a real shot. I think you spread the ball around to a number of receivers. I think you got to get Terry back up and running. He's only got 4 catches in the last 2 games. I think you need Terry to get to 7 touches, and then you hope Cam Sims, maybe Steven Sims finally breaks out and makes a couple plays for this team. Logan Thomas was their leading receiver last week. I think you need – I think defensively – you could come up with a scenario where they play well, where obviously he's a different quarterback, but Russ Wilson loves to do a lot of timing stuff, and while they didn't necessarily get to Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, they were able to disrupt the timing. So maybe the D-line is able to disrupt the timing, slow down the Seahawks' run game, which they still like to do and lean on with Chris Carson, and kind of disrupt their play action, which is huge for them. Defensively, you could see a way that this emerging young defense can make enough plays to keep Seattle maybe to 21, 24 points. Maybe you get some turnovers, some fumbles, whatever it is. Offensively is where you got to come up with a scenario. So to me, I think you need Alex healthy. You need him spreading the ball around. You got to keep giving the ball to J.D. McKissick on the ground. He had over 60 yards rushing last week. He averaged 6.2 a carry. He's elusive and a real threat. I think you got to increase his touches to close to 20 between carries and catches. And then you're going to need – I think you need a break. I think special teams has played well, but that kid Javon Leak, the former Terp, will probably be active again this week, I'd expect. You'd love to see him or whoever. Maybe somebody returns a kick, returns a punt, blocks a punt. I think the issue is going to be scoring. And, they got 2 defensive TDs last week. Maybe you get one from somewhere unexpectedly. And I think that would be a huge help this week with a pretty lethal Seahawks offense.